Okay, so in today's video, I'll be discussing what are the different types of pedaling style that you have most likely seen before out on the road and which one is right for you. So make sure to stay around till the end of the video to find out what you need to know about these sort of different pedaling styles. So when it comes to pedaling style, I'm sure you have seen three most common type of pedaling style out on the road. So the first type is the toe down type of pedaling style, which means that throughout the entire pedal stroke, their toes are pointing down to the ground the entire time. The second type is the much more flat foot type of pedaling style. And the third one is a bit of hybrid of the both. In the push phase, they are pushing down through the heel, but when they're coming up, they're pulling up and it becomes a toe down position. So for this video, we're going to call this too much ankling. And so among the three of these pedaling style, the question you might ask yourself is which one is right for you and which one is more efficient. Now to answer this question, I think we first need to understand what muscles that we are activating throughout the entire pedal stroke. So let's first look at the push phase of the pedal stroke, the pushing down. Now when we are pushing down on the pedal stroke, the muscles that we want to activate here is the glutes, the quads, and of course the calf. Now in order to activate these three muscles efficiently, personally I found a good way to cue myself that allows me to activate these three muscles, which is to push through my heels, drive through my heels, right? By thinking of that alone, automatically I'm generating the most power that I could because I'm activating three of them efficiently. Of course, it doesn't necessarily have to be cueing yourself to push through your heels. It could be anything, as long as you have a good mind-muscle connection and you are able to activate these three muscles. That is all that matters. Now of course, during the push phase, you might see that some people actually push through their toes, like what I'm doing right now. This is a toe down pedaling style. Now the thing is, this pedaling style is not wrong, but an issue that can happen quite commonly here is that because you are pushing through your toes, it can cause quite a lot of foot pain because your toes are not the strongest point throughout your entire foot. So if you drive power through your toes, over time, over long rides, it can actually cause quite a lot of discomfort, especially if you're a big type of rider or you push a lot of power, and that can be an issue. And so that is why through this example alone, you can see that during the push phase, the more efficient one is to probably drive through your heels and into the forefoot. That is the most efficient one when it comes to pushing down. And so now we come to the recovery phase of it. Now in the recovery phase, when your foot is coming up the pedal, what you should think about is just gently and very easily lifting off the pedals to generate that bit of power through the upstroke. I'm sure you have heard many pedaling advice out there that says when you finish the power phase and you're coming through the bottom and coming up, you should scrape mud off your foot, scrape mud off your foot in order to create a much more smoother pedal stroke. Now the thing is, that advice is not wrong, and for the right people, if you know how to connect your mind with your muscles, if you have a good mind-muscle connection, then that advice can really work well for you. You can create a really smooth pedal stroke with that scraping mud off your foot advice. But the thing is, for riders that are a little bit new to the sport, that advice alone can sometimes be enough to create from what was a good pedal stroke and turn it into a much more wobblier pedal stroke, which is the third type that we're going to introduce, which is too much of ankling. On the push phase, you're pushing down through your heels, and then because they reach the bottom of the pedal stroke, they're thinking of, I need to scrape mud off my foot. All of a sudden, they're pulling up with their toe down, and you create this too much ankling type of pedal stroke. Now, the ideal pedaling style is that we need to maintain a consistent style throughout the entire pedal stroke, regardless of if it is push or pull, because whether it is toe down or heel down, you most likely see that pro cyclists, they adopt one of it and they stick to it. You will never see them change from what was a toe down into suddenly becoming a heel down, toe down, heel down, toe down. It never happens. It's either that they are toe down all the way or they are heel down all the way. And so that is why I think that this advice of scraping mud off the foot, yes, it can work well for some people, but if you are struggling with that advice, then I would say that when you finish the power phase and you're coming into the bottom of the stroke, just think of very lightly and very easily lifting off the pedals. Or if you want it to be even simpler, just don't think of anything. Just let it naturally come over the top and just focus on the push phase of the pedal stroke. Again, what we're looking to achieve here is a consistent pedaling style and a smooth pedal stroke. And so I hope that that example alone is enough to prove to you that a consistent pedaling style is the best among the three of them. Doesn't matter if it's toe down or heel down. Of course, I think that heel down is a lot more efficient because you're not putting so much pressure on your front toe area. Either one of them is good, but what you want to avoid is the too much ankling. And so now we come to the part of the video where we talk about what you can do in order to change your pedaling style, both from the human side of things and the equipment side of things. Now, I think from the human part of it, what we need to do is that we need to have awareness of our pedaling style. And the key word here is really awareness, because we need to be aware of how we pedal, how our pedal style changes throughout different phases of cycling. So this includes everything from your cruising easy, from all the way to your, pushing hard when the pace is really on, riding indoors and outdoors. We need to be aware of how our pedaling style changes. And then we need to be constantly reminding ourselves to drop our heels if you're trying to adopt a much more heel down type of pedaling style. Always remind yourself to drive through your heels and into the forefoot. So in order to really change from one type of pedaling style to another type of pedaling style, I think that awareness is the key here. We need to be aware and constantly remind ourselves to do it. Now equipment wise, I think what we can do to change it is, first thing first, we need to make sure that we have the correct saddle height. Now, I've made a video quite a while back then on how to set up the correct saddle height. That is just a very basic guide on how to set up your saddle height if you are at home and you have no tools, no fancy sensors to set up your saddle height. So I'll link it here somewhere in the corner to find out how you can set up the correct saddle height. Now, the second thing that we're going to look at is actually the cleat position at the bottom of our shoe. Because believe it or not, this measurement alone can actually have a huge impact on how we pedal. Now, if you're the toe down type of rider and you're looking to change to a much more heel down type of position, maybe because you're experiencing a lot of foot pain around your toe area, then moving the cleats back can actually help solve that problem. And the same goes to the rider that have too much of ankling throughout their entire pedal stroke. What you need to do is to move the cleat back. Because imagine this, my hand is the pedal, right? If your cleat is all the way forward here, essentially your foot doesn't have that much of a stability in order to maintain that consistent pedaling style. And so that is why throughout the entire pedal stroke, your style changes so much, right? Because you lack that stability. So by moving it back to here, you're shortening the lever of your foot. So that is why it creates a much more stable pedaling style. And again, a while back, I've actually made a video on how to set up your cleats. So again, I'll link it here somewhere in the corner for you to watch that video, cleats setup. And so the third thing that you can look into, especially for smaller riders like me, I'm 165 centimeters tall, is your crank length, the length of your crank. And this is an issue especially when it comes to, when you're trying to be aero, and then for some smaller riders, they might have issue getting over the top of the pedal stroke because the hip angle here is so tight. And that is why I think that for smaller riders, if you're holding the drops, you're trying to get aero, and then you're really having an issue with your foot coming over the top of the pedals, then I think in that case it's really better to have a shorter crank. Because by having a shorter crank, essentially what happens is that you're increasing the hip angle and allowing your foot to come over the top much more easier. And this of course applies if you have poor flexibility as well. This is something that you can do equipment wise in order to change that scenario. And so those are the different types of pedaling style that you can adopt, and what are the differences between them. Now, things like the pedaling style, the handlebar width, these are all elements of bike fit, and these are things that I found once I got it right, it really changed the way I cycle. And so that is why I'm making a video about this, to have at least a video explaining a little bit more about different types of pedaling style. And so that is all I really have to share for this video, just a bit about the different types of pedaling style. And remember to subscribe to this channel for more cycling related tips and tricks.